What is up, everybody? My name is Murph. We're back. Had about a month-long hiatus. I know I put out one really shitty quality video talking about Elrond, being able to unlock Elrond soon, and how to get there. I'm back home from my work trip. Took about a week off. Had a really long week at work. Didn't have time to put any content out. And honestly, we didn't have a whole lot of new announcements, minus one that just came out recently regarding new Dol Guldur characters, which is going to be sweet. Still kind of sucks that we kind of have to go with these like random characters that are made up, not talking really about the Black Beast. I'm talking more about the Easterlings that are associated with it, but I digress. Today, we're going to talk about Elrond and the Rivendell team a little more because, as you guys know, we're going to be getting Elrond in game this week for the first go around for free-to-play players. Now, players who paid to unlock Elrond or Arwen the first time around were able to unlock Elrond the first time, and we're able to run him in arena and the raid, and now we're going to have him available to the masses. So with him being available to everybody, I had some requests from my guild to kind of talk through like, hey, give me a TLDR post, and I talk way too fucking much for a TLDR post, so like, I'm just going to make a video as a general overview of the Rivendell team as a whole, and we're kind of just going to talk through each individual character, what their role is, how important they are, some other fill-in, plug-and-play characters that fit well with the team. And then we're going to kind of talk through key abilities and what I would recommend kind of your priority order is for actually maxing the abilities out. And then later on this week, once I'm able to get back in the raid, because honestly, I missed my chance to do it this week because we were just wrapping up Chapter 3 in my guild, and we're about to roll into Chapter 4 in like 45 minutes or so. So honestly, not going to be able to record footage or gameplay for the raid with them, but next week's actual raid, I will go ahead and kind of film out chapter by chapter, kind of tips and tricks on how to use Rivendell's specific team in the raid for each chapter. So kind of things to look out for. But without further ado, I've already been talking for 2 minutes and we haven't even talked about any information here. So what I've done, because if anybody has watched this channel for a while, you know I love my fucking spreadsheet. So I went ahead and made a spreadsheet just with some information. So to start off with the actual team itself, first off, Rivendell's playstyle is based around providing buffs and extending those buffs to either themselves as a unit or providing them to their allies. And then with Elrond's leadership ability, your damage on each character is actually boosted by how many how many boons they have on that character. So basically, the characters give themselves boons or they give allies boons, and then Elrond is also able to extend those boons, and depending how many of those boons are on your character, your damage is boosted up to about 20%, I believe it is off the top of my head. I know I have it written down here somewhere else. But typically the way the team plays overall is you have Elrond serving as your focal point for tank. He's going to take as much damage as he can take through several stacks of provoke. Honestly, as long as you have boons on him, he's going to be able to maintain provoke basically 24/7 and just eat damage. And while he's eating damage, Elro here, based off of his passive, is going to be counterattacking. So Elro here counterattacks anytime that an ally with provoke or taunt or I believe retaliate, anytime they get hit by somebody, Elro here is going to counterattack that character. So Elro here deals a massive amount of kind of assisted counterattacks, and Lomion also deals a massive amount of damage as well. So while you have Elrond over here just eating all the hits, you've got Elro here and Lomion standing behind him, dishing out the damage. And then you've got Elrond and Arwen both kind of sitting away in the back. Elrond's throwing up heals on everybody. He's reviving characters as they die. He's able to provide and extend boons to everybody. Arwen is there to essentially be able to dispel enemy boons and be able to cleanse your own team's banes, as well as provide a little like niche amount of damage, but it's nothing to write home about. Now, to go through like just really brief pros and cons, Elrond is a team that is built to survive prolonged fights. They're the only team with a revive mechanic, and the team essentially doesn't deal a ton of damage like immediately on call, but they're able to dish out a prolonged amount of damage and really just control a fight the longer it goes on. Realistically, especially in arena, you're going to know really quick whether you're going to win or lose a battle with Elrond and the Rivendell team. And kind of the same goes for the raid. The longer and more drawn out a chapter is, the better they are. If it's a chapter like chapter 2 or chapter 4 that really calls upon dealing out a lot of damage. Yes, they're still one of the best teams in that chapter, but it's just it experience varies. Some cons, like I mentioned, there's not a lot of immediate like on-call damage. Your damage essentially comes in waves, no pun intended, Elrond. But if you get to a point where like you need a character dead, you kind of have to like pull abilities and kind of chain use abilities, like throw Elrahir's expose onto an enemy and then chain that into like one of Lomion's multi attacks that he has. But really, like there's not a whole lot of like just straight output of like AoE damage, like with a Mordor team, even though Mordor sucks, I get it, or a whole lot of like assist mechanics with Rohan or high crit, whatever else. Like Elrahir and Lumion have a bit of crit enhancement through crit chance, crit damage, all that. But whatever. I'm going on a rabbit hole. So Elrond, straight up, his role in the team is going to be the leader and to buff your characters as well as to heal. Now, the boons that he's able to provide himself and teammates are Fortitude, Regeneration, Protection, Counterattack, and Unbreakable. It's insane the amount of boons he's able to provide his teammates, which plays into his leadership ability. He's also able to AoE slow the enemy team with his Special 2 ability. And again, in the notes, he's the leader and focal point of the team. The heals that he provides are based off of his own health pool, so the more health Elrond has, the more healing he's going to be able to do. So that's where gearing Elrond up is going to be important. And I'm just realizing now, while recording, I didn't even do a tier list of like who to gear first, but whatever. Gear them all. Really, Elrond is definitely one of the like top 3 characters on the squad in order to invest gear into. And there's some niche teams going around where people have suggested replacing Elrond's leadership with Legolas's leadership in Chapter 2 for the Troll in order to get more buffs on the team related to like critting and being able to avoid attacks, all that. But I haven't invested enough into Legolas, honestly, and I highly doubt most people have the luxury of being able to invest into the full Rivendell team as well as like just Legolas for that one niche chapter. Now, Elladan is going to play the role of a tank and another buffer. He's able to provide massive amounts of provoke stacks to himself, regeneration to himself. Every turn, he has a % chance to give himself nimble, which is awesome because if RNG is in your favor, you basically will be able to avoid one attack like in between each turn you take. And if RNG is not in your favor, well, hey, reset, retry, right? But when he uses special 1 in order to give provoke to yourself, he also provides deadly to your other characters, making them more likely to crit, which is huge for the Troll for Chapter 2 in the raid. He's also able to apply Weaken with his basic attack. And some notes on him is that whereas you see a tank like Halbarad, where he has just a massive health pool and not a lot of armor, Elladan is kind of the inverse of that, where he doesn't have like a gigantic health pool, but he has a lot of armor, which means he's able to reduce incoming damage rather than take a ton of damage. So while you're reducing that incoming damage, what that also means is that with a smaller health pool, like %-wise, Elrond is going to be healing a huge chunk of Elladan's health every time you heal him up. So you're basically reducing incoming damage, and then Elrond's topping you off when you need to. Now, on top of that too, it is very easy to keep Provoke up because with this Special 2, you're essentially able to use this Special 2, AoE everybody, and once you max that ability out, if you have 3 boons on yourself or more, it will reduce the amount, or it basically refunds stamina on that ability. And if you have 3 boons or more, it equals out to being able to literally use his Special 2 every single turn possible. So you're able to essentially use it as just an AoE machine gun going over and over and over again, providing provoke to yourself. Where that kind of comes into an issue is like during the raid or sometimes in arena, your Elladan will just be eating so much damage that like he's gonna fucking die. And sometimes you kind of need to weigh keeping that provoke up against keeping Elladan up. So sometimes you'll just opt to, just throw out like a basic attack instead, let provoke fall off for a turn, get some heals in, get some regeneration in, and then provoke again with the next turn. But getting into our next character here, we've got Elrahir. Now, Elrahir's main role in the team is as a damage dealer. He's able to give might to himself through his Special 1, and he's also able to provide stealth to himself with his Special 2. And he's able to inflict expose, reducing enemy armor value on a single target with his Special 1 as well. And Elrahir deals a massive amount of single target damage, and as I mentioned earlier, his passive allows him to counterattack whenever Elladan is attacked has Provoke. So essentially, a lot of Elrond's damage is going to come just off of counterattacking. And as a note, I haven't seen anything on this. Granted, I don't really go diving down the bug forums or anything on this game, but I do think his passive is bugged because when it is maxed out, the text reads that he's supposed to counterattack every time that someone with Provoke or Taunt or whatever else is attacked. And there's plenty of times in Arena or in the raid where someone's attacked while they have Provoke, Elrond's attacked, and he doesn't counterattack. So, whatever. Hopefully that gets fixed. He's also kind of one thing that nobody really talks about is like, while the damage output from the counterattack is a great mechanic and it helps the team out, another thing that it does is if you're fighting another team that has a lot of nimble or block and you don't want to use like a big time ability in order to break through that block or to, get rid of the nimble on it, his counterattack can kind of just passively wipe those out because if a character with block or nimble attacks Elrond while under Provoke, that counterattack is going to knock nimble or block off, which means that once it's your next character's turn, that nimble or block aren't going to be there, so you can use an ability on them. Additionally, while I mentioned earlier that the team doesn't really excel at dealing out massive amounts of damage on command, it kind of does in the sense that you kind of have to just like wait and pick a moment, because that moment is going to be when you use Expose with Elrond here, which typically is turn 1. But after turn 1, you kind of wait till you get a good window, get some abilities off cooldown. You can drop Expose on an enemy. You can follow up with Lomion with one of his multi-attacks or someone else like that, and then get your damage in a window. Another note for Elrond here as well is that with Chapter 3 of the raid, Chapter 3, it doesn't matter if you can do damage. You don't get points for it. The only thing that happens with damage in Chapter 3 with you dealing out damage is if you kill an orc in Chapter 3, another one spawns in and it resets their turn meter. So you might be able to get like one extra attack in before that guy goes, giving you points in the long run. What is more beneficial in Chapter 3 is sustaining your characters, healing them, and cleansing debuffs. And in Chapter 3, you actually swap out Elrond here with Naramiri. You can also sometimes swap out for Naramiri in Chapter 4, but you don't swap out Elrond here. We'll get to that. The next character to talk about is Arwen, the daughter of Rivendell, or daughter of Elrond. I guess also daughter of Rivendell too, whatever. She is a support character with the team, and her main role is to kind of dispel and cleanse in order to support the team. And big boons that she provides are defensive, regeneration, immunity, and nimble. And the nimble comes from her passive, which is great. Basically, once a character goes like, I think it's 50% or 40% HP, they get 1 stack of nimble. It only happens once in a battle, but it can be a lifesaver. Immunity is huge, especially during Chapter 3. Basically, the immunity from her Special 2, cleanses everybody on the team, a certain amount of Banes, and then it also provides regeneration to all characters, and it provides immunity to the lowest health character on your team. And that's huge because typically that first time you can use it in Chapter 3, the character that has the most damage is the character that's currently marked and has stacks of the, I forget what it is, the kidnap bullshit, right? The pedo bane. Immunity will go on that character, and the enemy team will still focus that character because they're either focused or they have stacks of it already, and they won't gain any more because they have immunity. It's awesome. The defensive comes off of her basic attack and basically gives block to one character with the lowest health again. Again, notes, she doesn't deal a lot of damage. Like, she does get a damage boost from her passive being maxed out, but it's still not a lot of damage. Her main role is really just controlling kind of the edge and the flourish of the battle, and just kind of cleansing your teammates, dispelling enemy buffs, getting around taunts, provokes, or defensives, or whatever. Dispelling might, whatever. The immunity can be a real lifesaver, and she is massive for Chapter 3 and 4 with the amount of cleanses that she's able to provide the team, as well as the immunity. She's not really the MVP of those chapters, but Chapter 3 and 4 is really where Arwen shines compared to Chapter 1 and 2 of the raid. Now, Lomion is kind of my dark horse for this team, because when I first, on my main account, when I dolphined out and got Elrond at 5 stars the first go-around, I neglected Lomion for a long, long time, and I honestly just didn't even run him with the team. I forgot who I even ran with the team instead of him. It might have been just Strider, or I don't know. I'm totally blanking on it. Anyways, I didn't run him. I didn't really build him. And over time, I was like, well, okay, logically, I want to run all 5 Rivendell characters in the same squad, so I don't have to pull a character from another squad that I'll eventually have built out and put it on Rivendell and basically fuck up 2 squads. So I was like, I'm just gonna build Lomion and see what happens. And Lomion's the shit, dude. Lomion is able to grant might to himself to increase his own damage based off of his basic attack. He's able to provide nimble to himself with his special 2, and that special 2 is on a 3-turn cooldown. So essentially, you use it turn 1, you get nimble. Turn 2, you can't use it. Turn 3, you can't use it. Turn 4, you give yourself nimble. So essentially, you get a nimble 33% of your turns. That's great. That negates basically 1 free attack, and if he's not being focused, every 3 turns you're able to use it again, and you get to just stack up stacks of nimble on yourself. In addition to that, his multi-attack is gives you increased crit chance per Bane on yourself, and is massive for Chapter 2 when you really need to start knocking down stacks of the bullshit on the troll. You just use his special 1 for the multi-attack, which attacks 5 times, has increased crit chance per Bane, and you just runs in and goes and fucking knocks them all off. It's fucking great. Lomion is seriously overrated. He's underrated with this team. And honestly, I'm super glad that I built him recently, got him to gear 8. I'm currently pushing him to gear 9 on my main account. Now, some kind of honorable mention is these characters are not Rivendell elves, but they are characters that can be slotted into the team as a plug and play. Now, Naramiri is another support, dispel, cleanse character, and she's able to provide protection to a team as well, and basically has a % chance to stealth herself on certain turns, whatever. No Banes to provide. Literally, all she's there for is to cleanse your characters and heal them in Chapter 3 and sometimes Chapter 4. Some people have basically been saying you need to run Miri in Chapter 4 for the Balrog in order to, keep dispelling the flames or the shadow stacks or whatever else. But I'm seeing other people literally post results that are the exact same with Lomion, and it just kind of seems like if you have built Lomion, then just run Lomion in Chapter 4. And if you built Naramiri for Chapter 3 previously over Lomion, just run Naramiri. Like, they're kind of interchangeable. I really haven't seen, like, a definitive, like, this is the way to do it, because other people are scoring the same amount using the other character. But Chapter 3, yes, you swap out Elrond here for Naramiri. Now, Legolas is, again, same kind of thing. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but basically the kind of meta thing, I don't even think it's meta. I think people have just said it worked for them. Swapping out the leadership from Elrond to Legolas, and you just run Legolas in Chapter 2, and you still have Elrond on the team, but you don't run Elrond. Personally, I'm not a fan of it. It just seems like really niche and kind of a waste of resources to build up Legolas when you need to build up the rest of the team. Now, Legolas is still great. I'm not saying don't build Legolas. I'm just saying building Legolas for the sake of running him on Chapter 2 doesn't seem like a good enough reason to build Legolas. Like, just build him and run him with Gimli and, like, Balin or whatever. But personally, I would rather have Elrond and have the mass buff spam as well as the increased damage per buff. Because remember, with Elrond as the leader, you get a 5% damage buff per boon on each character. Max of 20%. So if you're doing the right shit and you're putting buffs on your boons on yourself, and Elrond's extending the duration of those boons, you can pretty reliably have like 4 boons on each character or around then, like RNG deciding, obviously, and have just like a flat 20% damage boost from Elrond's leadership. So, whatever. Anyways, what I want to go through now is I've kind of got a list of abilities and what I recommend kind of investing in the abilities at. Really, it's like, this isn't like the definitive list, but I'm going to go through all of the abilities on the Rivendell team and kind of explain to you what I think is the most important ones. So the first and most important one, period, and when we're talking about these abilities, I want to tell you essentially, like, I'm not talking about, oh, like, don't invest in this ability because it's the lowest in this tier list. I'm talking about, like, max rank and, like, investing that 200 plus of epic ability materials or the purple ability materials into, because it takes a lot of fucking ability materials to max out a team, and honestly, I don't think all teams are worth maxing their abilities on. But with this team, it's very important that a lot of these abilities are maxed out in order for it to perform properly. So number one is his leadership ability, Lord of Rivendell. Lord of Rivendell extends your boon duration and will provide fortitude to allies. It also increases your elf's damage by 4% per boon, a max of 20%, and increases light side allies' health by 10%. So this is the ability that essentially will extend boon duration on your character. So as you can see, as you level it up, you will be able to, gain fortitude. You'll be able to increase damage, all that. Like, yeah, that's cool. But the biggest thing we're talking about importance of abilities, is like these last tiers, because they're the most expensive. So you get an extra 5% health and +1 boon duration. So if you've been saving up the special ability materials, this is the first leadership ability you should be spending them on. Now, after this, in my opinion, the second most important ability on the team is Vilya's Light. Vilya's Light comes from the Elven Ring of Power that Elrond wields. Shout out to Gil-galad. Forgot his name for a second. King Gil-galad died at the siege of the Black Gate. I forget if it was at the Black Gates or if it was actually at Mountain Doom. Whatever. They died when they defeated Sauron, and Isildur cut the ring from his hand. All that stuff. Gil-galad died, gave the ring to Elrond. Elrond could have basically decided to be a literal king of elves and was like, nah, fam, I'm good. I'm gonna go chill at Rivendell. So, anyways, yeah, Vilya's Light heals all squad members, grants protection and regeneration to most wounded ally, revives an elf. Those are all super, super important, right? But those things don't happen at the last tier. What happens at the last tier is if you don't revive, you get +1 stamina for the ability. So instead of you having to wait 4 turns to use it, you can use it in 3. So that is great. It more heals over a shorter amount of time. It's phenomenal. Now, the next ability I want to talk about here, in my opinion, I think is incredibly important, is going to be the Pride of Eladris, which is Eladin's special one. With this ability, you're able to gain 3 stacks of Provoke, 1 stack of regeneration, and you grant deadly to yourself, Eladin, and to allies. So what this does is it gives you 3 stacks of Provoke, which means that you're going to keep Provoke up from the majority of this next round of turns, right? You're going to give regeneration to yourself so you can heal a bit at the beginning of your next turn, and you grant deadly to yourself and to allies. Now, deadly gives you a 30% critical chance increase. That's big, because if you're giving it to 2 allies, you've got a 50-50 shot of basically giving it to Lomion and or Elrohir. Kind of speaks for itself, especially this ability in Chapter 2 of the raid is massive. Getting that increased critical chance percent with your ally characters, being able to knock the boons off of the troll. Now, the next character we need to talk about real quick is going to be Elrohir, and the Arrow of Rivendell. His passive ability is the 4th most important ability. This gives him increased 20% crit damage. You always retaliate when an ally with Taunt or Provoke is hit, and you get increased retaliation damage if it's Eladin, which if it's Rivendell team, it's going to be Eladin. And the reason this is important, even though it's not working properly right now, is that he will always, always, always retaliate, and using Eladin's abilities properly will allow you to always have Provoke on, which means Eladin will always be targeted with Provoke, and Elrohir will always be counterattacking. So it's huge. Huge. Anyways, next up. God, I'm talking a lot in this video. I didn't think it was going to be this long, or I was going to be talking this much, but here we are. Next, most important ability is going to be Ancient Skill on Eladin. It is an AoE attack. You gain 1 stamina per boon on yourself, and you gain 2 stacks of Provoke. So if you have 3 boons or more when you use this ability, you will get all of your stamina refunded and be able to use this over and over and over and over and over again. And the only reason you wouldn't use this over and over again is if you didn't want to AoE and you wanted to use your basic attack, or if you wanted to use your special one instead, so that if you're in Chapter 2 on the raid, maybe instead of getting Provoke through AoE damaging, you want to gain Provoke via your special one and be able to give deadly to everybody else. Or maybe you don't have enough boons, you don't want to use it. But essentially, if the team's operating properly, by the time you use Ancient Skill the first time, you can essentially just use it in perpetuity until the battle's over. So like in Arena, this ability is huge. It's massively important. Next up, who do we got next? We've got Elrond here next. Okay. That's not Elrond here. That's Elodin. There we go. Next up, we got Deadly Grace with Elrond here. This ability is going to inflict expose on the enemy and give you might for 1 turn. And the final tier of this gives you plus 40% damage, which is a massive damage boost. And it's also going to give that expose a 2-turn duration. So essentially, this will allow you to put expose on an enemy and will guarantee that unless it is cleansed, you will then be able to follow up with your special 2 Elven Vengeance and team up with Elodin for a massive amount of damage on that character, which is kind of a moot point because you're already ignoring armor, but whatever. It's still massive damage reduction. After this, we are going for a 2-for-1 special with Arwen, and we're going to first go to Deadly Earnest. This ability is your Dispel for enemy characters. When you attack an enemy target, you Dispel 2 boons. You'll gain 20% turn meter, and for each boon on yourself, again, this comes into spreading boons and extending the duration of boons, you will gain 20% turn meter per boon on self, which means if you have, typically if you have 3 boons on yourself, you're gaining 80% turn meter. 9 times out of 10, when I use it with 3 boons or more, you're literally running up, you're dispelling this motherfucker, and then guess what? It's Arwen's turn again, and I'm attacking again, which means if you're able to use this ability with enough boons on yourself and take an instant turn again, it's essentially 1 free stam going back to that ability immediately, because you're taking 2 turns in a row, right? So essentially, by the time, you barely have to wait to use this ability again. So keep that in mind. Before you use this ability, try to make sure you have a couple of boons on yourself, so you can go again and be able to use this again really quick. Now, the next ability after this is actually going to be the Light of Rivendell, her passive ability. So her passive, when an ally drops to 50% health, they get nimble, which means they dodge 1 attack automatically. If the ally is light side, it's also a 50% chance to cleanse that Bane, and you gain 10% damage. And the reason this is important to max out is because this extra chance to cleanse 1 Bane can make or break a Chapter 3 or Chapter 4 run. You really cannot get enough cleansing opportunities in those chapters, and any opportunity you get to add another potential to cleanse, you want it. So after this, we're going for another 2-for-1 special, but for the first time on this list, we are moving down to our buddy Lomion here, the dark horse I was telling you about. So with Lomion, Flurry of Steel, this is special 1. First off, the final tier of this gives you an extra 10% damage per hit, which 10% doesn't seem like a crazy damage boost, but when we're talking about a 5-hit multi-attack, that's 10% damage per hit, so that's really 10% 5 times. To do the math. In addition to that, you also get an additional 3% crit chance per boon on self, which typically Lomion doesn't have. Lomion isn't really I feel like whenever I'm actually using the team, Lomion always seems to have less boons on himself than other characters, despite the fact that he can give himself nimble and might. However, this additional crit chance percent can really save your ass on the troll and help you dispel and control those stacks on the troll in Chapter 2 of the raid. After this, what do we got after this? We've got his special 2, so we've got Quick Finish here. Quick Finish, it's just going to attack your target and gain nimble. The reason this is this high up is because we have a stamina cost reduce, so you can use this every 3 turns instead of every 4, which means that instead of you getting nimble every 4 turns, you're getting nimble every 3 turns. That's good. You're dodging more attacks with this ability being maxed out, which means you're reducing incoming damage. On top of that, 40% damage is a massive damage boost for an ability to be maxed out. That is why this is this high. Next up, we are moving back up to the daddy that started it all, and we are looking at the Wrath of Rivendell, which is Elrond's special 2 ability. Now, this ability, the only reason it's this low, it's an amazing ability. The only reason it's this low is because if you look, it takes 7 stamina to be able to use this ability. 7 stamina. In Arena, you're typically only using this once per battle, maybe twice. But if you're using it once and then going 7 more turns, so when you're on turn 9 with Elrond, the battle's pretty much over at that point, and it's not going to do enough to really save the battle if you're losing it. And if you're already winning it at that point, this is basically just the slam dunk that ends it, right? So, but the final tier of this will give you a 40% damage increase, and it's a 40% damage increase to all targets because it attacks everybody, right? And it also gives you, it turns that slow into a 2-turn duration instead of a 1. And then obviously, again, another ability that plays off of this whole boon mechanic, where the more boons he has on himself, the more turn meter you're going to remove from this. After this, we are heading right back to our dark horse here, Lomion, where we're going to talk about his basic attack. His basic attack here, when you max it out, it always gains might. That's it. If you use it, you always have might on yourself. Great success. After this, we are moving back down to Arwen, where we're going to talk about her basic ability, Guarded Slash. This one, when maxed out, will always grant defensive. So again, these abilities, while it doesn't seem like they do anything crazy, like cool, 20% damage and always grant defensive, it's important because this team plays off of boons, and you want all your characters to have all their boons, right? All right, anyways, after this, we are heading right back up to one of the two twins to finish off their last, actually no, finish off 2 of their last 2 abilities. Actually, I was right, then I was wrong, then I was right. We're finishing off his last 2 abilities here. First one is Elven Vengeance. The final tier of Elven Vengeance gives you a massive damage increase, and it ignores 10% more of the enemy's armor. This is his big 4-time team up with Elodin. And after this one, we're going to talk about Hunter's Aim, which is his basic ability. And all this does is increase damage by 30%, but also an additional 5% damage per boon. Boons. It's all about boons. That's going to be the title of this video. Boons, boons, boons. I'm fucking going crazy right now. This is a 30-minute video. I didn't think it was going to be a 30-minute video. Next up, we're talking about Arwen here. Arwen, the Even Star. I don't know why this ability is called the Evening Star, because she's the Even Star, not the Evening Star. But the Even Star, it's going to cleanse 1 Bane from all squad members, grant 1 stack of regeneration for 1 turn, grant immunity for 1 turn to the most damaged Rivendell ally. This ability is fucking amazing. However, this ability, it's really important you get it to tier 5 here, so that it reduces the stamina requirement from it, and it cleanses all Bane, or cleanses Banes from all squad members. I'm gonna be honest, the additional stack of regeneration to a squad member below 50% health, like, it's not really that big of a deal. Like, it's just 1 stack of regeneration to 1 character, and that's a big ask for me to put 220 rare ability materials for 1 stack of regeneration every 5 turns on 1 character, right? So that's kind of the justification between that, or behind that. Elodin's last 2 abilities here, we're going to talk about. First off, his passive, the Shield of Rivendell. This ability is really, really good, but again, we're at the bottom of the list of abilities for this team, and it's really just because, like, if this final tier of this ability gave you a 100% chance to gain Nimble, I'd be all for it. It'd be way up there, but still, at the end of the day, you only get a 70% chance to gain Nimble, and due to that not being 100%, essentially, that leads to, with the raid at least, like, a lot of RNG attempts, because, like, you're going to get amazing scores and survivability out of Elodin if he gets Nimble every turn, and if you hit that 30% every turn and RNG just really fucking hates you, he's going to be taking a lot of damage. So there's that. The other one is going to be Baleful Spear, his basic attack here. Again, this one's this low because this is just a damage percent increase. Really, the key tier you want to hit here is that tier 5, I believe it is, where it always inflicts weaken. That is the most important part of leveling up this ability here. And then the last 3 we got here, we've got Elrond here, and we're going to talk about his passive. His passive is very important because what his passive is going to do is it's going to, every time it's Elrond's turn, he's going to heal a squad member for 7% of this character's maximum health. Remember, it's based off of Elrond's health, so gear him, get him his health pool up. And it's going to give you a percent chance to give counterattack. If you max the ability, it's guaranteed counterattack. While guaranteed counterattack is 1 boon on an allied character, really, I think it's really just important you get it to tier 5, so you have the highest amount of healing provided. The counterattack is kind of just meh. Like, I'll max his ability eventually, but not right now. I have too many other things to spend it on. Maybe once the economy opens up, we get more resources. And last two abilities we're going to talk about. The first one's going to be Lomion's passive ability, Constant Vigilance. Again, 15% chance to counterattack is the final tier of this ability, which means that he's going to have a 70% chance to counterattack, so kind of similar to Elrond. Like, if it was a 100% chance to counterattack, yeah, I'm maxing this shit out. I'm not spending 240 materials on a 70% chance to max his ability out. Not anytime soon, at least. After this, our final ability on the list is going to be Lord Elrond's ability, Ageless Wisdom, his basic attack, which just gives 1 stack of regeneration at like rank 3. So just get it to rank 3. I probably wasted materials getting it to rank 5 because I hardly ever attack with Elrond. Anyways, guys, that's going to kind of round out this entire video. So I know it's a long list of abilities. There's 21 total, but really, just focus on getting Elrond, Eladin's, and Elrohir's abilities up. Lomion is kind of the niche, like mid-tier character on the team, and then Arwen really just focus on her dispels and her cleansing, or her passive rather. And that's it. Thanks, guys. More videos coming soon, including an updated November farming guide. So, bye.